Hello, I'm Adrian Delargue, and today I'm gonna teach you how to tattoo Athena and her owl. Let's go. Okay guys, we're gonna start with the stencil. It's probably one of the most important things to do for a tattoo because the placement is probably the most important thing apart from the composition. So normally what I start to do is to place the actual stencil. See that it flows and follows the shape of the arm perfectly. Also that there is not like any weird areas that we might need to change or adjust. So when we have it, what we're gonna do is quickly clean the area with alcohol and give it a nice wipe like this. So also it's gonna remove anything that it might be on the top, also some moisturizing that then is gonna probably help to remove the stencil quite quicker. So we need something really dry, and then after we got that, we are gonna use a razor. What I do also is always like going not against the grain kind of, so we avoid to have any type of ingrown hairs or things like that. So just following slowly like that. We're gonna remove all this hair slowly and nicely. So we get this. Also be careful to not make any cut, obviously. If you have any like pimple or any kind of like mole, always be careful because you can just like shave it off. So, and we don't want that because it's gonna be bleeding and might get infected. So when we have all of this kind of like cleared out, put it back always and then give it another quick clean. Always make sure you do it with the part that is dry, so any hair sticks to the arm, and we have it there nice and clean. So normally what I do is with a really light Sharpie, I draw a line right on the middle, going like that, more or less. This is not gonna serve anything for the design. What it's gonna tell me is like what is the middle point, because arms, they always have like a little wider part than another one, and they have this shape going like this, you know, they have a little bump in here and then kind of like a valley. So you always kind of like try to find the most balanced area, but it doesn't have to be really precise. And then we're gonna place the actual stencil in here. Okay, I don't like to go like too close to this area because for the healing is not really nice, and you know, when they start to the tattoo start to heal, it might crack, and if it doesn't do anything really important for the design, we don't need to tattoo it. And then when we have this position, we take a red Sharpie so we differentiate and we don't get confused with the other one, and we just mark it up like this. That 3-4 marks are perfect. And then when I take this back, for the stencil, I always use Stencil Premium. I tried many during the years, but this one is the one that I most like because it's more like a gel. You don't need much. I did a mistake at the beginning of putting way too much, and then obviously it's gonna blur out. So you just put a thin layer, and then I massage it quite a bit. I'm being really patient. Before I used to kind of like rush to put the stencil on. I just massage it for a few minutes until I kind of start to feel like it's stacking a little bit. So that means it's drying up and it's like even and perfect. When I got that feeling that it's kind of like sticking, I stop, clean my hands, because you know it might blur out taking the stencil, and then we just place it. So we go with the markings, there we go, and then what I do is like go through the middle towards the sides, and then the other side. And then to avoid all these little creases and little wrinkles, I take again the paper I used before, always from the dry side, and pass it through. When I got this nice and smooth, is the tattoo reveal, or the stencil reveal in this case. And there we go. Nice and clean. so satisfying. Okay guys, I'm gonna show you quickly how I organize my station and what I use. So I will start with the machine. I use Stigma Rotary Force. I really like this machine because one of the main reasons, I'm very forgetful and you can run this machine while you are charging it, so you don't have to worry about leaving it charging before night. Also you can, like, you know, be a little bit more safe in your studio. You don't leave anything plugged and avoid getting fire. Also I really like it because this one in particular is a 3.7 stroke, which allows me to work very well with lining and also with a little bit of shading. I use hazel butter foam. I use it mostly when I'm doing lines because it allows me to control how much humidity I put into the stencil. So it's a kind of like a more precise way of cleaning and avoiding any weird smudge. And then I will use like normal green soap for like kind of like wider wipes, and you know, like when you already have all the lines in and you want to get a proper clean. Then I have this little piece of plastic which doesn't look like much, but it's really important for me because when you're doing like long sessions, normally the needles, they start to build up a little bit of dry ink. So you put a little bit of green soap in that and it will allow you to keep clean and more like run smoothly the needles for like a session of 7 hours or something like that. Then like normal ink caps, I use hazel butter for moisturizing the skin and containing the ink. And then for the cartridges, I have here organized like the liners, shaders and magnums, and then one special, I will talk to you the last bit about it. For lining, I use normally 3 liner 25, 5 liner 30. This one is a 7 35, 9 35, and then I have 9 round shader, 7 magnum and 13 magnum. And this little guy is the last addition to my setup. It's from Stella, from Killer Ink, and it's called kind of like a whip shading needle. When I'm gonna do stippling in large areas and I want it to be flat and the same kind of shading, not having it like from a gradient, I use that one because it allows you to go from a really long range rather than if you are using just a single needle. So yeah, pretty much that's my setup. Also I have the dynamic triple black and Panthera crystal to do my gray shadings. I normally mix up half and half and then like 3 drops, so I have like 3 tones for it, but I'm not very much fussed about because then I control the shading and the intensity with my pressure and the times the amount of times I go through the same area. This is my setup, guys. I hope you like it and we're ready to crack on the tattoo. So guys, I'm gonna start lining. For the line work, normally what I do, how I start is always like tapping a little bit of hazel butter. I choose tapping instead of rubbing because obviously the stencil might still a little bit wet. Maybe there's like a hot day, or so if you do that, you can see like it, you know, it smudges a little bit. So normally I just tap it. For lining, I'm gonna start with a 935 round shader, round liner. Normally how I stretch the tattoo is in a way that it's not gonna, you know, it's perpendicular to the tattoo. So I start like this and I go down this way, always where I can see the line. When I feel like I cannot continue anymore, I stop. Don't try to be a hero while lining. You have to be confident, and if you see like you're starting to shake a little bit, just stop. And then when you are ready, you start a little bit before and go down again. And then the same, we stop, we tap the excess of ink, and then we're moving up now. Always keeping 90 degrees against the skin, and then you get a nice crisp line. And then we continue doing this all over. Okay, and we stop. We tap and we continue. For this liner, I set the machine at 7.5, and this machine, the rotary force, Stigma rotary force, it brings an option which is called boost mode. So what it does is learns how tough the skin is, and it makes the machine change a little bit the speed if it's finding trouble to get the ink in, and it's just perfect for this kind of sport when you have like changing skin, because the inside is always a little bit like softer than the outside, because obviously on the outside of the arm is rubbing against the clothes and anything like to do on your daily life. And now we're gonna go for a big line. There we go. Perfect. We tap it and we can check that's in. Okay, we're gonna do another one here. I do always line towards me because I can see where I'm going with the needle, and I see the line that I'm going, and also for the way my wrist works, I feel I have more control. But always trying to go as parallel as I can, because if you tilt it too much, it might create a little bit more of trauma for the skin, and when it heals, it might open up. So all the time as parallel as you can, and then you just go towards that. Also, a little tip that if you are going to approach a big line or a line that you might not feel super comfortable with, is what I do is like I exhale when I'm doing that line. It's kind of like when people try to aim on a shooting range or something like that. So you inhale, and then while you are pulling the line, you exhale like this. That helps me a lot to stabilize my breathing and my lines. There we go, perfect. So now we're gonna do with this liner all the thick outline, and I always like a thick outline because it creates more contrast against the inner thinner lines, and also you create kind of like a container for the tattoo, so it looks more compact and more kind of like a sticker like, which is the stuff that I love. Here we go. So I use this 9 liner for all the outline. If you have a really good stencil, you could do all the outline first, but I wouldn't recommend doing that because you might mess the stencil up. You need to be really sure your stencil and your stencil stuff is really good. If not, don't take the risk and just go bit by bit. So in this case, I'm doing this thick line as well here, because later on we're gonna fill up all this area in black. So when you're using your Magnum, it's gonna be a little bit easier to get to the edge of that line and get a smooth fit in, rather than if you use a thin liner. Okay, in this point, when I have like really sharp things, I'm using the thick liner. I don't try to finish the corner. I'm gonna change to another liner. In this case is the 5 liner, a little bit thinner, and then we finish the corner, so we get a really sharp one. There we go. Perfect. We could use this one now that we're here to fill up these little lines. I will back that to a little bit later on. At this stage I don't need the reference because I have everything on my stencil, but when I come to the part that I'm doing the shading, I'm gonna put it next to it so I don't miss anything. But right now I thrown this design a few times when you try it, then when you trace it, and now again I'm gonna do it, so I know what I have to do and which line goes where. Um, that's kind of like experience as well. So if you're not 100% sure, don't do it. That's the way I do it. And also, what I do sometimes is like when I'm doing the tattoo and there is something that on the design works but on the skin it might not work, I change it. But obviously always consult your customer to see that you are on the same page. But tattooing, I believe, like sometimes is about the flow and how it fits on the skin. So like I said, something that might work on paper, then when you apply the stencil it might not work. So be prepared to do some adjustments on the way. uh, so yeah, keep your reference next to you if you don't feel like it. In this stage for me it's not necessary, but I will really need it later when I'm doing all the shading to check all the deepness and different tones. So now that we have an area just covered with all the thick outlines and creating that contrast, like this part that is going under the hair, I'm gonna start lining with a little bit of a thinner liner. In this case it's a fiber, but I'm not gonna do every single thread of hair with the 5. I'm just gonna do kind of like the main big lines that mark the direction. Okay, like this one, for example, this one that comes here. So this way we create a little bit more of a dynamic look, because if it looks everything with the same liner, in my opinion, it's a little bit not natural, because on normal hair you can like some bits that stack together and create this more like a thick look rather than the little ones that's gonna be super thin. So when I have that, now I'm gonna change an even thinner cartridge. In this case is a 3 liner, 0.25, so it's super tight. With this type of machine, cartridge, I'm gonna go a little bit lower on speed. I was before at 7.5 and I'm gonna go to 7, because you need to be really sure you're not gonna cut the skin, and you need to go slowly so you don't have any blowout or anything. And then slowly and steady you trace all those lines. If I found myself like here, I have a line that on the design worked, but on the skin is a little bit too small, I don't do it. You always have to think about how the tattoo is gonna heal in a few years. So it's better to keep it simple when it comes to lines. If you are doing realism, you can be a little bit more flexible, but if you want a clean tattoo, sometimes less is more. I'm gonna go now for a little bit of a thicker line. So for this one, I'm gonna use the 9 round shader. This gives you a little bit of thickness without having to use a really big needle, which, because of the shape they have, it's like they make this kind of cone shape. You might dig a little bit too much, and I really like how they heal. Okay, that's perfect. So I'm gonna use the 9 round shader, and you're gonna see, you might see like some little lines that kind of like the needle didn't go properly through, but no worries, because when they heal, those lines are gonna expand and they're gonna make a really nice solid line. So here we go. So I only use this type of thick needles for areas of transition, like for example in this case the helmet comes like from kind of like the crown into the helmet, so there's gonna be like a big dip, so I'm gonna use it for that. And then also it will be easier to shade from there because of the thickness of the line, and also then you can use it for like filling in parts like this So you already have that round shape there, and you make sure you don't fill in with a liner, which always is going to create a little bit more of a scar. So I'm going to use it again. In this case, you're going to see this line that goes up there, and it's going to create a good contrast between the helmet and the owl, because they are two separated themes. Up here, like we said, don't be a hero. You have plenty of time to do this line. And now I feel comfortable, so I go all the way down. The wrist is really important for the lining. So if you cannot have a very smooth movement with it, just do it in two parts. Don't risk it. And then we're gonna finish this little part here. So obviously for like tight areas it's much easier. So normally what I do is like I pull from two areas, like, and I use like this part of my hand and I pull it this way, and then I help myself with the paper, and then I have a nice tight, surface and flat. If there is a little bit like more like flexible skin, I will use the fingers until I get the desired tightness, but also always being careful that you don't change the shape of the line, because that when it comes back it will distort your tattoo. I use dynamic triple black because of all the range that I tried on my life is the one that always heals the best, to my opinion. I gave it a chance for a while to fusion, but I wasn't completely happy how the lines stayed when they healed. I think it was a little bit too liquid for me, so I think dynamic is the perfect combination of being liquid enough to be easy to put in the skin, and also have enough consistency to stay way longer, like crisp and nice on the skin. And also I really like all the range they have, like from also like white, even though I don't use white much, because I believe with time white always tends to turn a little bit into yellow. Melanin builds up on top, and when you get a little bit tan it might change the color. So for very fair skin people it might look really nice, but if you have more like an olive skin tone and you tan pretty quick just like me, it might not be the greatest to use. So I always prefer to leave it just skin tone, and then to mix it always I use Panthera crystal, because I like to do my own gray depending on the day and on the design. I don't like to keep a set for too long, so I prefer to go with the flow kind of. If I have a full set of grayscale, there might be a couple of them that I don't use that much, and then can affect a little bit the quality of the ink. So I prefer to use kind of like a more fresh approach to it. The way I approach circles, for example, in this area, it's always like going half and half. So I will start from this area, going down, and then whenever I have a line coming, I will stop, and then I will change the angle of my hand, and I will bring it from here towards the line I just did, and then join them together. And then I do a third pass. This one is a little bit trickier because your hand is a little bit out of posture, but yeah, doing it in 3 times I think is the safest way. I've seen people that they can do it in one go, but for me I always feel like there is an area that the needle is not on the proper angle, and then when it heals one line is gonna be nice and crispy, and the other one it might open a little bit more. So this way we have the same consistency going all around this circle. I'm pretty much done on this area with the thick liner. So I'm just gonna clean the water out of this needle, and I'm gonna go with a 5 liner, and I'm gonna line quite a bit of the face and everything. I never start from any particular line. It's the one I feel more comfortable with, and then I readjust the posture of my wrist to pull the line. But there is no line that you should start first or anything like that. It's how you feel. The reason of tapping is because I don't want to lose the stencil, and also I think it's a little bit nicer for the customer rather than if you keep dry wiping. At some point the skin is gonna turn red quicker, and by the end of the session the customer energy might be really low and the skin really sore. So I prefer to tap and then give it a proper wash and then see if I have to correct anything, but it's mainly like experience, where to stop and everything. And also I feel more comfortable. It took me a while to learn only to tap, but since I did it, I improved a lot my speed and the way the tattoos don't get so red during the session. As you can tell now, there is some areas that are like barely any reddish. For example, over there is a little bit more, but that's normal because the skin is really, really thin and sensitive. Okay, here, just gonna make sure this corner is perfect. So that's why I put it to the inside. And then I'm gonna trace the one in the middle. And then I stop right when there's like that connection with that line. And then I'll continue. I start a little bit from here, and then I go all the way down. Just making the little dents because it's been fighting with the spear. And then we're gonna do another big line here. So we go slowly going down. And now when I feel like I'm losing a little bit of the angle, I stop. And then I continue from here until I get, and then it's just a little teeny tiny bit for the end. In this part now on the spear, as it's metallic, has this really thin shade, kind of like with sharp edges. So I'm just gonna use the 3 liner to make a really sharp lines. There we go. And then use that for the lines in here. The same needle, I'm gonna use it for the hair because it's like the thinnest part of the owl. I like to combine a 5 liner and a 3 liner for the hair. So we got like in the human hair a different type of thickness. So it happens the same with the owl. Like the hair and the feathers, they have different thickness. So give it a little bit more of a natural look. So the way I make sure that we're gonna join together is like I control the pressure, and also with this machine I have the option of give it a little bit of give, so you make sure nothing is gonna expand too much. Also, the reason of doing engraving is like lines imitate shading. So if they join a little bit together over time, they're gonna still make that kind of like shading effect. But obviously you need to make sure it's gonna look crispy for many, many years. The best way to do it is to use a machine that is quite soft with the skin, I used to tattoo with a Dancurin, which was great for lining, really fast, allowed me to pack the lines and the color really quick. But then I realized with time the lines were expanding too much. I tried different needle configurations, different speeds, but then until I didn't try this new machine, I didn't realize the problem was like the way the needle was hitting the skin, and the direct drive system, it wasn't what I was looking for. Draw until you are tired, and when you're tired, draw more. It's the only way to learn. Uh, you cannot skip steps. You have to earn your way to tattooing, and also it's gonna give you so many resources when you're doing any type of design that you can incorporate to the idea that the customer brings, that you might help him to solve the problems, and also like, you know, try to learn as much as you can from other artists. It doesn't matter if it's like sculpture, an animation artist, or even musicians. You know, try to learn the process, like the creative process, and how people understand the ideas and transforming it into an image or into words or into music. If you learn that code, it's gonna open up so many good things for you. Also, keep constantly um, soaking information and art. If you have a spare time, watch some animation movies. It doesn't have to be only anime. There's so many good artists making movies, and also it's part of the language of images, and you can see like many like postures, patterns, resources, palettes, anything. So yeah, just try to be a sponge and absorb everything you can. I have the grip wrap so thick because after so many years tattooing, I start to feel a lot of pain on my hand, because I was using a really thin one, and that kind of like forced me to make more pressure. So now wrapping it thicker, at the end of the day, I feel much nicer, and also it gives you a little bit more of a stability with the machine. It absorbs the vibration. So what I do normally is I put two pieces of kitchen towel, I fold them up, and then I wrap it around. So that way I'm gonna make sure I have a nice grip to it, and by the end of the day, if I have a really long session, I don't have to do any exercise or stretching or anything to keep on going. Because when you tattoo like 5 days a week or something like that, you can start to really feel it on your body. So yeah, I recommend also to guys to stretch as much as you can your back. You know, we're always in really weird postures. So if you want to keep tattooing for many years without any problem, stretching and doing exercise is key. Okay, so I have pretty much all the lines done, and I have left this bit which is like really soft features. So I changed the needle for a 3 liner going on 7.5, and I have diluted black. So with the lightest setting, I'm just gonna softly shade it. Do not worry about how much pressure do you put, because we don't want these lines to stay. So just mark it up so we don't lose them when we clean up the tattoo. I rather have this little line to work more freely with the shading of the face, rather than leave just the stencil. I have to work my way in a very uncomfortable way, to my opinion. So just softly marking it. You could do this with water, but I don't like the red mark that leaves around the tattoo. So just with a little bit of black and you are done. So all the lines are done. Now the next step is gonna be the solid black. Okay, so now I put a new cartridge. This one is the 7 Magnum soft edge, and we're gonna pull the needle in, but not too much. I like to tattoo with the needle quite out, and the speed is gonna be 7.5 again. For the solid black, I like to go at the same speed. I found that if I control my pressure, it just heals perfectly and it's gonna give us that solid look that we want. So now I have the wet towel. I'm gonna be constantly using it, so it's a little bit easier to remove the excess of ink. And I'm gonna start always from a corner and go very slowly in a circular motion. Normally I put like around 45 degree, not too lower the angle, and then as you can see it just gets in perfectly. So you feel like you need to go a couple of times, it's fine, don't try to overwork it. And then again the same, so you can see like the circular motion, and then I go back a little bit and that's solid on it. And now, like you probably know, it's like you go halfway with the other side of the black and do the same again. And then I go a little bit back, a little bit faster, and that's it. So you just need to do this for approximately 3 hours. So this is your time to have a chat with your customer because you don't have to pay too much attention like with the lines. So yeah, just enjoy. The reason because I do the circular motions is because I believe it covers the area nicer than if I just go up and down, which you can trace some parallel lines that you might not be able to see as simple, with your normal look. But doing a circular motion, you cover the area a little bit nicer, in my opinion. I never had, as you can see, if I do now, for example, I'm gonna do up and down, you can see those lines. That is like, it looks like a little trident, while if I do the circular motion, it's completely filled in. I do really like the brand Magic Moon for my cartridges. I tried so many, there's people saying like this brand is better and everything. Like I believe with everything, you need to use what it works for you. I love Magic Moon because they are really sharp and the needle configurations that they have really adapts to what I do. I try others and I feel like a little bit more blunt, and for the style and how I put lines, it doesn't work for me. So I use Magic Moon, and now I use Stellar as well, because I think they have come up with this really cool idea of doing whip shading or like white stippling range of needles, which I haven't seen before, and I gave them a try, and honestly I'm really happy. So I work always with different brands. I'm not a guy that really sticks to just only one. I like to use everything for my tattoos that I believe is the best. So that would be my needle brand to go, Stellar and Magic Moon. So the way to stay within the lines is what pretty much, I don't know, it's like a sixth sense that you have. But obviously you learn how thick your needles are, And what I do is like, I know like if I start from here, I know this is not gonna go over the line, and then I always stop with a little bit of precaution, like a little bit before. Also, if you do those thick lines, like I was telling before, with the 9 shader or something a little bit thicker, it's easier to get closer to the line and stay within. If I have a 3 liner, for example, it will be really easy to go over. So every line that I do that is gonna be then filled in with solid black, like all of these ones, I always go for a thicker line, so then it's a little bit easier. Then afterwards, I will go through all that line with a little bit of a thinner round liner, or even like a really small round shader, and make sure that's all filled in. Also bear in mind that if you see a teeny tiny gap or a little bit of difference, don't worry, because as we said, the lines span and everything joins together. I've seen other artists that they don't fill up all the way because they know that's going to happen. I prefer to make sure there's no a single chance that there's going to be a weird gap, so then later I will go with a thinner round liner. I think I was like around the 3rd year after starting to tattoo when I started to really dig into what I wanted to develop as my style. Because the first years I wanted to learn as much as I could from any other style, and I had to do that because it was kind of like a walk-in studio. So you have to do a little bit of everything. And then the funny thing is, like, the style that I was thinking I was going for, or I started like kind of like, you know, desiring to achieve, it was more like traditional American, so like colorful bold lines. And then while working on that first studio and kind of like touching every single style, I find myself that I really like more like engraving and solid black work. It has to also connect with what I studied on the art school. That was like lino cut and wood printing. I don't know, I felt kind of natural, and that's what I said, like, okay, this is the style I want to start to explore. Also, in that time, there was no many people doing that kind of style, so it kind of felt good to, you know, find your own corner and try to be the best at it. Some people, they think they haven't found their style because it's a really hard thing to notice by yourself. But it's like, ask your customers why they chose you for their tattoos, because that's what helped me to realize that some people were starting to say like, my style was really special, or they could recognize my drawings on the internet, which in that moment I couldn't do it for myself and I was really lost. So it's like, just be patient, keep drawing, keep getting information, and try to start your own language. If you use certain way of shading or certain elements on your tattoo, keep doing that, so you develop your own language and people start to recognize that. So now I changed the needle for the 9 round shader because I'm gonna go through the smaller bits, and basically it's the same as with the Magnum, little circular motion. Also, now that I have this needle, I'm gonna go through the areas that I might think they're not properly covered by the Magnum. So all those lines and corners that you might think you couldn't get properly, you can do it on your way and at the same time filling up. So you save up time, but without compromising any type of quality. And then just getting the hair, like checking constantly the reference, which I put now for this part. And then just slowly make your way and fill up all those tiny gaps. So the reason I do all the solid black first, instead of like starting and finishing small sections, is first because I like to see the kind of like the whole picture, and that helps me to tone the different areas instead of going too dark in this area and then like a little bit too light. Even though I have the reference next to me, I want to avoid that issue. And also I consider and I feel like the customers struggles when I'm packing the solid black. So to split the session into 3 defined sections like lining, solid black, and then shading, it kind of helps them also to realize, like, you know, it's like, I mean, it's part of the tattoo. I mean, in this state there's this much left. And also for the last bit, it makes it a little bit easier than if I have to bring back the big needles again. Also, it's a little bit scary. So that's why I like to always do all the lining first, all the solid black, make sure it's really well packed in, and then just have fun with the shading. So now I'm gonna start doing the stippling or whip shading with the needle from Stella. So I'm gonna use a middle gray tone and start doing kind of like this area and fill it up all with gray. So that way I'm gonna have like a smooth texture of dots all over this big area. If I did it with just one needle or with a 3 liner, the motion of my hand, it creates areas which the dot, it might be a little bit thicker, or you can see there is a little bit more of pressure. With this needle, the Magnum stipler or whip shader, I get a more even result. So you see, you can start to see a little bit how it's darkening. I'm gonna go all over this, just respecting the areas that I want to have a skin tone. So I'm going in this direction first. I know I'm gonna do a little bit of cross hats. So I'm gonna do now in this direction. So we're gonna get an even more soft gray tone. Then if you wanna like put more emphasis in some areas, like get a little bit more contrast, we will use the 3 liner, but for this kind of massive soft areas, we're gonna use this one. You can use it as a normal stippler as well, like to create gradient. That's what we're gonna do in this area later. But for now, I just wanna lay the gray tones, and from that start to give a little bit more of drama to the tattoo. So there is not specific numbers of layers. I always do what the design needs. I believe art is not, you can use technique, obviously, but there is not much fun on that. So just go with what you think is gonna look best. Always try not to overwork the skin, because if you do that, you know that the tattoo is not gonna heal well, the customer might have some scars. The way I have to tell if I'm overworking the skin is when the tattoo, instead of getting a little bit red, it gets a brownish color and a kind of like a gooey substance starts to appear. That is telling me I'm putting a little bit too much pressure, or should I stop working that area for a little bit. So now we move into the more gradient area. So now we can put a little bit more of strength at the beginning of the stroke and lifting it a little bit at the back. So we got that smooth gradient out of this one. If you want to go smoother, you could use later on again a normal soft edge magnum and blend it better, or even a 3 liner. I think so far this is looking great. So we're just gonna keep going a little bit more and then let it rest. A little bit of cross hatch and almost there. Now for this bigger area, I'm gonna turn down the voltage a little bit lower. So in this case, it's gonna be 6 with some give. In this case, it's gonna give setting 3. So it's gonna be a really soft shading. So you can tell now the machine is working way softer. So what we just need is to build up the layers until we get a really smooth stippling. Always working the area from when it's darker, checking the reference, and if you feel like you need to fill up some areas that the machine with the stippling cannot go, you just dot it by hand and make sure it's properly even. Yeah, I think it's really important to bring up the biggest characteristic of some areas, even though it doesn't reflect what it would look in real life. I think it gives like a really nice touch on the design. For example, with this part, it will be shaded because it's like behind this area, but I like it to leave it open because it really remarks the shape of the helmet. You could see examples on movies like Sin City, which they use some unconventional shading. So places like where a character is bleeding white blood. It's not real, it's not realistic, but it gives a really nice dramatic and artistic feeling to it. So it's one of the things I apply to my designs too. Something that might be a little bit more unconventional, but I think it gives character and it defines your style. And we're gonna put a little bit more of ink in this area because we're having the light inciding from here quite a bit, and here we have a little valley, so we just fill up this and we create a big contrast. Don't go too dark because it might look a little bit like you've gone too far, so it's better to revisit it later and continue with other areas. I do a lot of research for images. I'm constantly getting inspiration. I try to visit as many museums as I can, watch stuff on YouTube, see other artists. I think I was speaking later also about like watching animated movies. That gives you tons of inspiration and resources to then that you can apply to your designs. Obviously, you try to make your own stuff, but you cannot help to be conditioned. So at least you need to have a wide kind of like library of what we can use for you, and always transforming into something that is for yourself, and then you can be unique. But I do love to work from my head, but I think for different subjects you need to do your own research. And mostly into tattooing, you guys will be working for commission work or custom work, so you don't have always all those references in your head. I can draw now certain themes or designs, from scratch because I've done it a few times, like octopus, certain animals and things like that. But if you get a chance, always look for some references and then adapt it to your style. So to do the hair, what I do normally is just go with parallel lines towards it like that, and then do cross hats only on the areas that are a little bit darker. So you see like this little fold, but I leave the other one following the direction of the hair, so you get like this volume. And then to give it an extra to the hair, a little bit more volume, I will go with the normal soft edge magnum and blend it a little bit better, because if not, this is gonna be a little bit too rough. But yeah, just keep going like that with this technique. First this direction and then this one. So now for this area and this area, the design has like a different texture. It will be like kind of like a rusty part of the metal. So for that, what I'm gonna do is a different kind of movement, very regular. You don't have to follow like any technical way. You just go a little bit crazy like this. So you're creating the texture on the base. So obviously at the beginning it's not gonna look very nice. Look at that. And I'm gonna do the same in this one here. So we'll do the same, kind of like little weird lines, and then we stop and clean. And now from here, we're gonna create the shading with the stippling, because it gives an extra bit to the texture, and we just make it like it's shaded. A little bit more, and cross hats. Again, this direction, always combining both directions, and you can start to see how the texture or kind of like a rusty metal. A little bit more in here, and that's it. And here the same. In this case, I'm gonna bring it from here because it's thinner, and the light cannot get that well into that area. And then here, every time I see something I need to correct, I do it in a moment, because if not, it's really easy to forget. So if you see something that you can fix in that moment or make it a little bit better, do it. So we're quickly moving into the owl, like doing all these little details before our final stage, which is gonna be the one that allows us to blend everything properly. So now we're working basically on texture and shapes of the shading, and then we'll give it a nice blend coming from here, which will help to add some depth. I'm not using background on my designs because I come from the style of like patchwork. So what you need with that kind of style, or what I understand you need, is a little bit of like contrast between the pieces that are all together. So using background kind of eliminates that sticker kind of look that I really like from the patchwork. So that's why I try always to contain all the design inside the same subject and not use any background. So we're going back now with the 7 Magnum to give the last bit of the tattoo, which is like a really smooth and nice shading coming from the solid black. I try to achieve it with only the 3 liner, but I think it hurts a little bit too much the skin because you have to do many passes. to achieve that darkness, so I go with a little bit of diluted black and the 7 Magnum, and it's gonna get that real smooth finishing that we want. So I'm gonna go all over the tattoo with this, and then only the last details, check that everything is perfect, and we're gonna be done. So guys, I'm gonna just check that I don't have left any little gap or anything left, but I think we are done. You know how tattoo artists we are, we always say we're done and we continue, but no, we are absolutely done. Okay guys, the tattoo is done, so now we're gonna go with the aftercare. What I use is gonna be a pad. In this case I cut it out so it fits the area, and I'll have to cover the whole thing. I don't put any cream or anything, I'm just gonna let the tattoo bleed and lick all that excess of ink and plasma and glue and all the stuff. And I'm just gonna seal it with some tape, make sure it's really tight, like that. Perfect. And now we put one here on top. This is great. And one on the sides always, so we make sure anything is gonna come in. An extra one for security. We never know if he's gonna be driving or not, your customer, so you better make sure it doesn't fall off while he's driving. So there we go. So that will be it. For the cream, I just recommend Palmer's cocoa butter a couple of times a day. Don't over moisturize it. 10 days without swimming pool, and that will be it. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. You can follow me on my Instagram, Adrian Delargue. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. Bye bye. Love you. Bye. Bye bye bye.